I've had people ask me why. They come right up to me. They've seen my videos and they see me in public and they come right up to me. And some people have said, why are you doing these videos about what happened with you and Mark Zuckerberg? Do you think you're really going to get something from it? And you know, my response to them has been, well, you know what, put yourself in my position. So here we go. Listen to me here. So have you ever done something great? Have you ever designed something? You ever had something taken away from you? Have you ever had something taken away from you that you designed? Oh, I have, numerous times. So let's go back. The first time I designed something was well, not the first time, but the first one I tried to make money off of. Okay. So I just started high school. There was that That's Incredible show on, and I was studying an art class, and on the That's Incredible show, they're discussing the different uses that people could use for solar panels. And so I designed this light that was solar powered. Yeah, I said that. I designed a light that was solar powered. It was like a lantern. It had a hole in the bottom of it with a magnet and a stick screwed in it, so you could stick it in the ground, or you could take the stick off and you could stick it under the hood of your car, or stick it on the side of your tin building. It floated, and then it had a hole through it where you could put a rope, so you could tie a whole bunch of them together. So let's say if you were out on a river, or if you were out in an ocean, and you could just throw them all out and, you know, create a great big old circle of them. That was pretty neat, huh? And it had prisms. The prisms was to try to magnify the light coming in to get a better charge, and to magnify the light coming out of it where you could see it a further distance. Okay? Well, right about the time I started high school, the event network started. They were putting in ads in the back of Outdoor Life magazine, Dirt Rider, Dirt Bike, Papa Mechanics, trying to get people to, inquire about getting a patent, and they were supposed to go. So, I was always looking at that and debating if I should, do that. But I kept on trying to improve it more and more and more and more and more. And then, the batteries improved over the years. So I had to improve, the battery in my design, and improve the light, instead of going with like a cadescent style small bulb, I'd go with a, krypton bulb, or a halogen, and then an LED. Okay. Well, when I got out of school, somebody convinced me that, you know what, I'd really like to use that light. Man, I think that'd be really handy. I could use it on a farm. I could stick it on the side of my tractor when I'm working on it, when it breaks down out in the field. So I sent it in to that event network. And what happened was, rather than just getting a patent, they wanted to do all this stuff and that first. And then they racked up this humongous bill before there was even a bill of getting a patent. And then, I ain't got no way of paying that. So then they said, well, you know what? The government wants your idea. They want exclusive rights to your idea. But, you owe us $6,000. And I said, well, I can't come up with $6,000. Yeah, well, we know you can't come up with $6,000, but I'll tell you what. You go to write off your intellectual rights to us, and we'll call it paid for. We'll get rid of that bill, and you won't owe us nothing. And you got to sign a non-disclosure, too, that we didn't do this. You never created that. Well, I didn't feel like I had a choice, so I did. So I lost my intellectual rights to my design. And I signed a non-disclosure, and it was like a year or two after that, if you remember in the news, they got in trouble for stealing people's ideas, just like that. But because I already signed the non-disclosure, I never got anything out of it. And that wasn't the first thing I designed. I designed performance parts for bikes and cars and brackets, and I improved on several tools that a lot of people use, and you'd be surprised what those are. And you know it hurts. It hurts to see your product, your design on the shelf of a store, and you can't afford to buy it. It hurts to be able to go and see that product, not be able to afford it, like I said. And you say, hey, I designed that. And the guy will say, well, you must be rich. And I say, no, I didn't get anything for it. Well, so that was happening to me a lot. Then my friend, she got meningitis, she got paralyzed. So instead of coming up with a design of an actual product, I decided to come up with a business idea, thinking, a business idea wouldn't get stolen like an idea and an invention. So I worked really hard on this business idea, and I really worked hard on it. And I didn't have a lot of opportunities in life. And when you get out of school, you meet your this girlfriend you really want to impress, and the parents say, well, do you know what you're going to be doing in life? Have you got it all figured out? Well, you know what, I didn't. But after my friend got paralyzed and I worked on this plan, I knew this is what I wanted to do. And I just knew by all my figures that it was going to make billions of dollars, and I was going to take that money and I was going to help other people. So the plan was going to help her get past barriers and so she could have a better life. But I was also going to help people that was like me, that didn't have a future. So when you got out of high school, you had options. Or if you had health problems, you had options. You weren't just left alone to just wither away. Well, I had a chance at a really good job that came to me, and I passed it up. I had a chance to go work for a wealthy family that really liked me in South Korea. And they wanted me to work over there for them and work over the United States too. And it would have been the chance of a lifetime. And I turned it down because I was so sure that this business idea that I had, this internet business, was going to be so big. This is what I had to do. Well, I left this, I turned down the opportunity to go over to South Korea. I left the security job because it was an enormous amount of hours and it was wearing me down. And I concentrated on the business plan. And I needed to be closer to home to her, needed to be closer to home to my stepdad because he had an end stage of a disease. So I took smaller jobs. And I was trying really hard to get this going. My last part was trying to get the coding done, find somebody to do it, and find the investors. That was my last two steps. Well, I took a job at the local landfill, and then that's where the 9/11 pre-event witness bit came in, happened to me when these terrorists came in. And I tell you, that in getting hurt at the job, because I got, they don't know if it was carbon monoxide or what. Carbon monoxide buildup, birds were dying. I got vertigo, it wouldn't go away. They think my vestibular system got destroyed, and then I got glass in my eye, and then the front got an infection, and the front came off, and then, the 9/11 bit. But the 9/11 bit and the vertigo were the two things that just really put a halt to what I was doing. And the government was causing me so much trouble, and basically blacklisting me that I couldn't, and I couldn't work because of the vertigo, that I was pretty much stuck. So I was trying to make ends meet any way I could. I wanted to work so bad. So I'd do anything I could to make money. So at that time, there was a lot of meth labs going on, and the government, or the local government, the county is trying to get rid of the people who have these campers because they're showing up in old campers. So I thought, well, hey, I think I might be able to part out, a couple of those, and, I wouldn't mind restoring a couple too. So I, started asking the people, and then the campers just started coming in. I didn't make a lot of money off it, but you know, it paid some bills. The medical bills were piling up. And that's when I met Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, he got in trouble with this girl at college, and he knew he was going to get expelled, or he thought he was going to get expelled, but he didn't know yet. They had a going-away party for him. And then he met Priscilla Chan waiting to use the bathroom, and I think that's actually when he might have called me. And he said he had this idea of buying a bus, and then he was going to live at college, and he was going to convert it into a schoolie. That's a bus that college students live in to try to save on money. And then he was going to sell it afterward, and he wanted to know if I had the parts. And he was going to do YouTube videos of this transformation and the life living in this bus, and he thought he was just going to be a millionaire, you know, making these videos and putting them online. And supposedly, him and his dad had just gotten into an argument about what had happened, and his dad said, you know, we got so much money to do this, you know, so much money, you know, to try to make something yourself, and let's see if you can really do it. Because if you can't, then you're going to wind up managing a McDonald's. Sounds a little different than the side that Mark's been telling everybody, right? So he contacts me, and my internet don't work too well, and you know, because the government's routing it through the FBI. And he shows up with his best friend from school, and I do believe his name was Eduardo Severin, in a little silver Honda car with a side window broke out, and the front nose of the car was all loose from them running. As Severin said, they're running away from somebody in a car, and they bottomed it out on some back road. So, I'm going, you want to know why I'm so mad? So here we go. So, I asked Mark about his idea of making money on doing his videos. I'm doing a video right here, but I haven't been able to make no money off it. And I tell him about my internet business plan, the business I'm trying to create, and Mark tells me that he's into computers. Same hacking club as one of my friends, and he can do the coding. He says, well, that's simple, I can do the coding. And he said that he knew all these people that started internet businesses, and, you know, he's got rich friends. He said, I'd be glad to invest in it. He said, I'll see if I can get the investors. Well, he found me the investors, he agreed to do the coding, but then this lawyer that was his mentor, friend, Mark Howitson, got involved. Well, then Mark's attitude about the whole thing changed. He said, you're just going to get in the way. He says, you need to move to New York to where everybody else is at. I said, you're just going to get in the way. See, you can't even afford to move there. You ought to just let him use the plan. And I said, well, I ain't just going to give it to you. I've worked on it for all these years. You know, I got it all figured out. And I was telling him about how I had my ideas stolen from him, that I was going to get patents on. And he says, well, okay, well, then I'll give you a percentage back. Will that work? And I said, you know what? Sure. Okay, let's work on that percentage bit. Yeah, I'll agree to that. Sure. Okay. So, you know what, that night, I'm all excited. I'm thinking, you know what, I'm set for life. Even if I'm sick, I can pay my taxes, and I can buy my groceries and pay my utility bills. Hey, this is all going to work out. Well, so we work on an agreement. Mark had a problem with what he would pay me in return. I came up with one idea, it was cents on the dollar. Oh, that's too much, he says. I got it down lower. Oh, that's still too much. He didn't want to pay nothing. So he finally got it down to 15 cents on a dollar that he would owe me for using the business plan. But I mentioned to him the reason why the business plan was created, and that was to help my friend Tiffany. And how I figured out, through my own experiences in life, that it would help these other people too. Give other people those opportunities that I didn't have. And I said, so what you need to do is, I'll agree to 15 cents on a dollar, but you got to donate, once it's up and going good, to free clinics, shelters, and help find a cure for MDA for my friend from walking with. I said, because that's the sole reason and why I did the plan. That's the sole reason of creating the business. It wasn't so much for me to get rich. I live a very simple life, and you know what? I enjoy living a simple life. And if I had billions, I'd still live a simple life. Sure, I'd do a few things for myself, maybe a a bigger garage, a nice old classic car to go to car shows, and a trailer, with my mom and my friends. But you know what? That's about as far as it gets. But I do like designing, so I could use the money towards that. But I grew up helping people. That's where my heart and my soul is at. Okay? So Mark agreed to this. He owed me 15 cents in every dollar, and then he had to donate to those places. And if he didn't, then he owed me 20 cents in every dollar. And that extra 5% I would give to all those places. The free clinics and shelters and help MDA or MDA or some other organization that's going to help find a cure for neuromuscular diseases. Okay? Well, but then after the recording, now, hold on here, let's back up. So when we did the business agreement, and yes, this really did happen, I asked for a witness. His name was Joe, friend of the family. He was there on his lunch break. Mark had Mark Howitson, the lawyer, his friend and mentor, on the phone. Mark had his new Sony disc camera that just came out that year, which he was going to do the YouTube videos with. So they agree that they're going to do a YouTube, or do a video with his Sony disc camera of us talking about the agreement. Okay? Howitzon's on the phone as a witness, but also as a lawyer taking notes that's going to get the agreement in writing that he's going to return to me to sign. We got the agreement done on the video. My friend Joe left. And then Mark says to me, well, I want you to sign over your intellectual rights to your work before I can call it mine. And nobody will know any different. And I said, no, wait a minute. Now, if I did that and it becomes your work, then what happens to the percentage that you owe me? You're just going to get out of it. And then he said to me, well, if you're not going to sign over your intellectual rights to your work, then I don't want anybody to see this recording, and I don't want you taking any recordings of me to prove I was here. That he was there. And then I asked him, I said, did you just rob me? And he said to me, well, I told you I was a player and asked if you could trust me. That is the real Mark Zuckerberg. He stole that business plan and did his best to destroy all evidence that he was there before he left. And somehow he convinced Priscilla Chan, that he had known for only a very short amount of time, to travel to Central City, Iowa. And then on that last day, when she showed up to get her dog, somehow they had worked this out ahead of time. He says to me, why don't you talk to her while he gets ready, and don't bother him. So Priscilla's really shy. So, she didn't really have much to say, but we talked about that business idea, that business plan. And she liked the idea of donating to the free clinics and the shelters and help find a cure for neuromuscular disease. She liked that part. But I try to, I say, well, you ain't got much to say, and I go to get, oh, no, come back. You see what she was doing? Somehow Mark convinced her to occupy me while he stole everything. So let me be very clear on the legal aspect of this. The lawyer, Mark Howitson, aided and abetted Mark Zuckerberg on intellectual property theft and fraud. Priscilla Chan aided Mark on the theft of intellectual property and fraud. But the lawyer, since he's a lawyer and using his knowledge to direct Mark how to get around the law, is the worst part. And then, during the battle over ownership, they're all on the phone. They called me. Mark Howitzon's representing Mark Zuckerberg. And you know what? Now he's Mark's business partner, too. And they want me to give a statement that I gave my intellectual rights to Mark in that business plan. And I refused. And I said, just use the business plan like we agreed. We both get rich. Nobody will ever know that you got it from me. You can just say it's yours. As long as I get my percentage, nobody will ever know. Mark said he didn't want to do that. He didn't want the Supreme Court to know there was ever a business agreement, because if he did, the Supreme Court would have wanted to hear from me, and I would have been owed my percentage. Now, they recorded me out of context. What they did is they took the words and they mixed them around to make it sound like I gave it to them. I don't know if they used that in the Supreme Court or not, but they said that they would if I wouldn't give them a statement. And Mark said he was also going to try to make it look like his work evolved into my work. He had my notebook. You guys know the notebook that he was flashing around, that the college students at Harvard said he had this notebook. But you know, it had some other things in it. It had some philosophy quotes in it, because I was studying philosophy. It had some other designs in there. Yeah, I was designing a barbecue grill from somebody. So after the court hearing, they settled. They settled the court hearing. And the investors, Mark Severin and all of them, they all signed a non-disclosure not to reveal, you know, like me, as long as they got a piece. But I got nothing. You ask me why I'm so mad? I'm mad at the government. I'm mad at the government because they were watching me get robbed by Mark. And they won't come forward. They won't let me have any of that surveillance footage in the archives to prove what happened. On the first day that Mark got here, now they were building a church. They were building a church just next door. There's a cornfield, and then there was an area where they're building the church at. And there was 2 FBI agents up there holding a parabolic dish trying to listen to us. There was a vehicle parked over there. That's the vehicle that the people were holding the parabolic dish. Normally they're just sitting there. They had a vehicle parked up on the highway with the passenger side seat removed, with a big camera on a tripod that they could move remotely. They had a car parked in the cemetery just behind our property, and they had one in front of the house. And then part of the time they had somebody up on the hill with a big old telephoto lens. Looked like, I mean, it was so big it looked like an 80mm refractor with a camera hooked to it. And then they had a helicopter, a black one, that would fly over with a guy with a strap hanging on, holding on to him if he doesn't fall out, hanging out of the helicopter with the camera taking pictures. You can't tell me there ain't no proof. I have these diseases, Emery-Dreifuss muscular dystrophy, which is eventually going to take my life. Sjogren's, which is another one that's probably going to eventually take my life. Meniere's disease, and severe back and neck problems, because I was in a service elevator with about, a half a ton of granite, and it fell with me in it. Never got a dime out of that. The only thing they gave me was, they gave me just enough money to barely pay my bills. That was long ago, and I had to call up every place, all these hospitals, you know, and places that I owed money, and I said, well, here's what they gave me. Decide how much of it each one of you is going to get, and you can divide it up, and I got nothing. Wasn't enough to pay the bills, so they all took a little bit less. So now I have to try to survive off nothing. Nothing, and I do mean nothing. Mark left me broke. My best friend, my female friend, my best female friend, she died. She knew what I was trying to do. I don't think her parents did. But she did. I told her. But she might have thought it was just one of my ideas and it wouldn't come true. But she knew she was going to pass away, and she was trying to get in contact with me before she did. And if Mark wouldn't have done what he did, robbing me and screwing over his friends, that short amount of time would have made the difference, that she would have been able to call me before she passed away like she wanted to. And she had this just big secret that she'd been hanging on to all these years, that she wanted me to know. You want to know why I'm so mad and I'm trying to bring this out? Listen to this. So I have to try to survive off nothing. I go to free food lines. The free food line's usually about a quarter of a mile long. Okay? They finally stuck beyond this health care that's like Medicaid, like a Medicaid expansion. So I get some things, but you know what? It doesn't cover everything that you need. It don't pay the bills. It doesn't cover all the health care that I need. So I have to figure out some way of paying for it, and I can't. So I don't get the health care that I need. I can't afford to survive. So we all got that point down, right? You know, I've had people ask me, do you have family? Do I have family? Well, here's an interesting thing. I don't know. You know, I want to have kids. I don't know. Want to know why? That secret that my friend wanted to tell me, let her go. Her and I had this agreement that if one of us was to pass away, if you could somehow come from the grave and help each other, we would. When she came back from the hospital after having meningitis and survived, and she's paralyzed from the waist down, and she couldn't sit on a bed without leaning against me. She was asking me about life. And she said, what would you do if you died? And I said, you know what, if I died, I think I would hang around and help all my friends. And she said, you know what, I think that's a good idea, let's do that. So interestingly enough, she passed away. And what shortly after that, I had somebody contact me. And I was trying to find music because after having the vertigo and getting the Mears disease, quite a just loud ringing noise, So I wanted to listen to all kinds of music. And this person contacted me to go to this address. And they claimed they had all this music left over from a garage sale, and they listed off all these records. And, oh man, they were really collectible. And I said, you know what, those are worth a lot of money. I said, yeah, I'll take them to a record store. Oh, no, you just come and get them, he said. So I didn't recognize the address. And then I went to the address, and it wound up being my ex-girlfriend, her grandparents' house. But her grandparent had passed away a long time before that. And I tell you, this was a girl that really meant a lot to me. And, things didn't work out. I was the one that broke up with her. And we had our problems. And we almost got married. But, she wasn't as faithful as I would have liked somebody to be. And I don't want to marry somebody that's not too faithful. And when we broke up, she said she was pregnant. And she said, someday I'm gonna, you're never gonna see the kid, and then, and then she said, and someday, it's gonna haunt you, and then she's gonna come forward, years later. But, she could have been into the other people, like when, she said, she was at work and, did the boss in a copy room. So, I go to the address, and I'm talking to the guy, and he's showing me all the records, and then there's a divider that you open up, it opens up into the living room, and then there she is, my ex, with her friend, best friend, their mom, and this kid with her friend. And then she goes to the kitchen, and she grabs out this 16-year-old, and I couldn't see. I know from now by asking around, she must have been 16. It must have been her 16th birthday. And I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. I couldn't see for just a fraction of a second. And she yanks this kid in the room, and she says, "This is what this was or could be your deadbeat dad or something. Didn't make something of himself." And then she throws the kid back in the other room, and then she screams and rah, 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 so fast I can't make sense out of it. And then he says, "You gotta leave." And then they gather up all these records, and as they go to get in the car, they just throw them all in there. I had a migraine headache the day I was there, and the noise was ringing pretty loud. I couldn't understand what was said. So, being the way a person should be, I tried to contact her. I tried to contact her mom, and her mom contacted me, and her mom she says, it takes more to be a father than to have a kid, and you're not the father, so I don't know. No. But here's an interesting thing, why I'm so mad at Mark. You know, Mark talked about always had these two kids with Priscilla Chan. Talking about how he's such a great father. Well, first off, a great father wouldn't rob people and then become wealthy off that theft. And then while the other person is sick with health problems and can't afford his health care and can't afford his bills. You know what? That isn't showing your kids you're a good person. And if there's a possibility that I have a kid out there, and because Mark ripped me off, I wasn't worthy enough to be a father, man, you know how much that hurts? That's terrible. But no, but there's another side to this. You know, this muscular dystrophy that I've been diagnosed with, it's inherited. There's a possibility that any of my offspring could have it. And I really wouldn't want to break the news to them either. Why am I so mad, and why am I trying to bring this out so much? I was trying to help so many people. There was people that needed my help, that was expecting to get it, that didn't get it. I have old classmates at work who have free clinics and shelters. You know, that would have been a lot to me to help this, you know. I went to my first high school reunion. Let's get this straight. My first high school reunion, this is after I broke up with that girl I told you. I almost got married. And here's two classmates drinking a beer. Hey, you know, he's all drunk, he's pointing at me, and he goes, there's Lynn, he's a bad person, blah, 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 blah. He's talking about me and the girlfriend breaking up because it was a pretty bad breakup. Remember, I broke up with her, but I got the blame for a lot of the stuff that happened. And people were coming up to me, and I said, Lynn, are you really that bad person? We didn't expect that from you. And you know what I did? I held my head. I was all excited to go to that high school reunion. I was driving my 81 Firebird Formula. I was all dressed up. I was looking really nice. I sat at a table all by myself as people walked up and said that to me, and I held my head low and I walked out. And I kept on working on this business plan, and I kept on saying to myself, one of these days I'm going to get this going, and I'm going to show them all. I'm going to get it going, and then I'm going to go back to my high school reunion someday, and I'm going to show them all. And I'm going to be somebody great, and they're going to know I'm a good person, not a bad one. But after Mark ripped me off, guess what? I didn't get to do that. You know how I wanted to help all those people? I have some relatives that really needed the help bad. My uncle went blind. He was a truck driver. He was a military vet. Went blind, had an eye stroke. So me being sick, not having much, and my mom, you know, she's age is way up there, and you know, we live together now. You know, we both don't have much. We took care of him. He was like 30 miles away, but we would go there like every other day for years to take care of him because he was staying at his home blind. And then I found a vehicle for Mom, a real low mileage Explorer, and we would drive him back and forth to appointments, including the VA hospital, which is still a long ways away from this place. And we wore that vehicle down to nothing. It's so rusted out now that you can practically see through it. And the windows have a short, it has shorts in it, and the gauges all go crazy, and the windows won't go up and down. And you know what? So that means when it rained, the rain would come in, and you know, winter's coming. I'm expected to drive this to my appointments, and winter's coming. And then I had another relative, an extended one. She's in real bad shape. She's in a care center, and she's on that expanded Medicaid, and she has no way of contacting anybody, and we don't even know where she's at. You know, if I could, if Mark wouldn't have robbed me, I'd do the right thing. I would have helped him. You know, if she needed a computer or, you know, or something to keep in contact with people, somebody pay a phone bill, I would have done it if I would have had the money coming in. We had a guy just outside of town, and he was trying to do something good. He was letting somebody that didn't have a place to stay in a camper right outside his house. And he had a dog in it, and the dog knocked over the heater and caught the camper on fire. and then it caught the house on fire, and they lost everything. And they can't get the insurance to pay. But you know what? If I would not have gotten screwed by Mark, that's somebody I would have helped. He had no options. Now let's do some comparison about Mark. You know, his wife was working at a hospital. In a hospital, I read this online, a hospital needed money. So here's what Mark did. Mark offered to give the hospital the money they needed to keep it running. In exchange of, you know what, it was like a memorial hospital built, with some, in memory of somebody. But in order to get that money, they have to take the name off the hospital and change it to Zuckerberg Memorial Hospital. Is that much of a philanthropist to you? No. They had a thing on the internet where Mark Zuckerberg hired a contractor to build some kind of exotic tree houses in some complex that he has in Hawaii. But he stiffed the contractor and won't pay the bill. He hired locals to do security work in Hawaii, and one of them, I read this online, one of them was an older gentleman with heart problems. In the area that he did security at, they had to take like a gator, an off-road vehicle there to get to his post. And it stormed, and it flooded. Nobody went to get him. So he left that post trying to get to higher ground, and they said the ground that he had to go on was just a thin strip, and they found him clinging to a tree, but alive. And his heart was bad. And because of what happened, he died. You know what Zuckerberg offered him for the wrongful death? $5,000. Does that sound like a good person to you? He goes around and he hurts people. He takes advantage of them, just like he robbed me, took advantage of me. When I wanted to start the business, I imagined hiring disabled people. In fact, I said that to Mark. I said, if you do this and I get the percentage, I would really like it if you would hire disabled people. Hire disabled engineers, hire, if you can, hire people that do the fact checking, the overseers, of the site. Hire some disabled people. These disabled people need a job. But the world isn't helping them because, most people think, well, people should change for the job, but the job shouldn't change for them. But that's not the way that it is. That's the way you want it, but that's just not the way it is. But they want to work. Because the way society is hitting the disabled people is disabled people should just wither down to nothing and own nothing, and then eventually they can't make, that's why they can't make their bill. If Mark would have paid me the percentage that I was owed, I had a series of ideas that I wanted to put into effect here locally. And every one of those was to benefit somebody else, not me. Growing up in a small town with a small farm, farming community with a small school, there are some people that managed to go to college, but not everybody could go to college, and maybe your grades weren't that great, but you still want to better yourself. But there's other people that grades weren't so bad. But there you go. They're supporters of the family, they're supporters of the farm. So, there's limitations there of what they can do. I wanted to put in effect some ideas that would give people, when they're in school, the ability to learn something before they got out, so they could get a job right the next day, right after graduation. Now, one of the ideas I had was, and you'd have to live in this area probably to understand. We have car clubs in these little towns. This one doesn't have them, but the other ones do. And they have car shows. And racing's big right up the road, And We have a machinist right out of town. It's a friend. We got three repair shops that I know, maybe more. And so I had an idea of starting a car club, and I came up with the idea on the car club and the idea of helping people right at the beginning when I came up with the idea, and it was going to be called Iowa Social Cruisers and Retro Travelers. And then I even drew the design up, and I put Iowa, and then you could have a chapter on the bottom, which would be what city you're from. And what I wanted to do is, in this car club, is to have mentors that would teach kids how to work on different things. Maybe you could teach them how to do body work, maybe rebuild an engine, do some machine work. And then I wanted to go beyond that. In some of the states, they have race teams. Now here in Iowa, we have race teams, but they're solar, okay? But either or, okay? But, we didn't have much vocational classes when I was here, and I think it would be nice if we had some vocational classes with some real good hands-on training to learn how to do machining. If you learn how to do machining, you're going to learn math. You're going to learn fractions. And engine boring is not a good moneymaker right now because we're getting into electric cars and cars are lasting longer. But machining is still good for doing tooling, and you got rolling machine operators we have here in Cedar Rapids. So machinist is still a good trade. I would have liked to have put in make it so kids have these life skills if they're able. And you know what? And I'm open to listening to more. Because I know not everybody wants those life skills. They want some other life skills. So would have been willing to listen to people to find other ways. Now, there was one thing that I wanted to do that sounds like it was more towards me. But you need to listen to this. We used to have the Prairie Ballroom. It was just not too far from Central City. And it burnt down. But it was just a bar with a ballroom where people danced and garage bands played. But you know what? There's people that got into music and they didn't get into cars. And that's an opportunity because they could get on that stage, people can hear them, and maybe that might open doors for them to get signed on for a record deal. Or who knows what else. So what I wanted to do was find a place along Highway 13, build something on that idea. Have a family-oriented bar that's kind of a restaurant in the front. And then you would walk through it, and then there'd be sliding doors that would open like you go into a store. With a dance floor and a stage in the back. And then during the weekdays, some nights you could have karaoke, but you'd have open bands that would sign up. It could be country, it could be rock. Over here, the big thing is gospel. I'm not into it, but a lot of people are. Bluegrass. I got one of my students I went to school with lives next door. He's really good at bluegrass, and he's played up on stage many times. And I think that would be another way of getting more people opportunity. Another idea that I wanted to do was I wanted to build a large pavilion here in Central City. And preferably, I wanted to put a storm shelter under it. Because we need a storm shelter in this town, the way the weather is getting bad. But the idea of the pavilion was, you have one now at the farmer's market uses, but it's next to the river. But the bugs are bad, and it floods. I wanted to put one in some other place, and wherever I did it, if I would have got that percentage, I probably would have built it and donated it to the city. I would figure that would be the best thing to do. And that pavilion could have been used for the farmers markets, but my thought was, why not have a potluck, a citywide potluck, once a year where everybody gets together? It's a meet and greet. You have those at churches, but not everybody's a church member. So this would kind of bring the community together, and you can have kids playing games, You can have grown-ups doing tug-of-war. It would also be a place where they could do flea markets, and then when they have the town-wide sales, the people that don't want to have it at their house, they could have it there inside their pavilion. And I wanted to find a large well, a good-sized piece of land and grow fruit trees on it. And then all the fruits that came from the trees, I wanted to donate to Free Food. And I've been growing trees in my home, a little bit of nothing. The neighbor gave me some white peach seeds, and I started growing them. And I got like 70 trees now, white peach trees. And then the neighbor sprayed and killed off 50 of the trees. And then I planted more, so now the trees aren't big anymore. When they're big, they're producing a lot. Now they're producing very little. And you know, I wasn't giving that all away. What I was doing was using that money from what people bought from those and helped pay my bills. And then there was still plenty left, and then I would give those to the community. So it was about, I would say the people that got the free ones was probably a little bit more than what I sold. So I managed to do that on my own on almost nothing. So Mark, you really hurt a lot of people. And you know what? The world needs to know how good of a guy that I am and what I was trying to do. And, you know, how big of a con artist you are and the fraud that got you where you are today. You ripped me off. You ripped me off, and you know what? I don't think you should be getting away with it. And I don't care if it's been more than 10 years, because the lawyer keeps saying, oh, client privilege, I can't reveal anything that happened over client privilege, you know. And then he pleads the fifth. Well, yeah, because if it does, he's going to get in trouble. Now, you've seen that he just blowed $71 billion on the metaverse. Well, there's an interesting thing here. The metaverse that he's created is based on something that was in my notebook and what I told him. But I was going against it because I thought there was problems with it. One, you know what? People want to be in the real world. Wearing a virtual headset, you know what? It's like a toy. You're going to get tired of it. If you're in a virtual world, where's the virtual laws? You got morals in this world, and you got laws. And nobody is going to be able to stop people from doing something wrong in a virtual world. I thought it would be nice that somebody that's paralyzed could pretend to get out and pretend like there's somebody that can walk and go visit like Egypt or Mexico or England. You know, that I thought was really neat. And I thought, you know, you could have them do that and make it like a geocache where they find something. And that something that they find might allow them to prove themselves on the site so they could, you know, have something else, you know, like improve their avatar or something. But I thought what would happen is some old pervert would pretend to be a little kid. And I thought it could be worse than that. I thought it could be somebody that, you know, has some other kind of fetish could be on there causing trouble. And you know what? That's happening right now. That's one of the problems on the metaverse, is that people are doing that, you know. So I was shying away from it. But I did see the idea being good, as you could do, let's say if you did a virtual world, but it's mixed with reality, like, you know, going to see the pyramids, okay? But you could put advertising in specific places, you know, like where you're walking at could be advertising. You could put advertising on the building, you could put advertising on the billboards. You could sell the car, you could sell the land, you could sell the house, you could sell the yacht. And it'd be virtual, so you could make money in multiple ways. Sounds like the metaverse, right? But I shied away from it. So even that's not original. So you're saying that he blew this $71 billion, but what you didn't realize is after I finally got high-speed internet out in the middle of the country, I started doing these videos, and I got a lawyer after being diagnosed with these horrible diseases, and the lawyer said, I don't think you're going to get anything out of Mark, but go after the lawyer. If you go after the lawyer and you can prove what happened, then you might be able to get somewhere. I got a slight chance. Well, guess what? That's what I did. So I went after the lawyer. I took him to the Bar Association and tried to prove that they collect what he did by directing Mark to commit intellectual property theft and fraud. And they bought off some of the witnesses with so much money that the witnesses claimed it was like winning the ultimate lottery. Yes, they did that. I don't know if it was Mark or the lawyer, but somebody did it. So they're scared. So that's $71 billion that Mark's blowing. Everybody has said, you know what, he's untouchable. He's scared. I'm going to tell you what, he didn't just commit intellectual property theft and fraud. He committed intellectual property theft and fraud, took it all the way up to the Supreme Court, did it right in front of the court. And then he took a step and a step and a step and a step and a step. And every time he did that, it was to try to cover up his tracks, like buying off the witnesses, like the movie, The Social Network, that doesn't actually represent the truth. It was fictitious, where he took everything that happened and then put it and joggled it in different places to make the outcome different, so you don't know what really happened. And he didn't start it at the theft. He didn't show the theft. He left that part out, but he got the beginning. Did you understand? Do you want to know why I'm doing this? That's why I'm doing this. If you're an investor that got screwed, you were on Facebook and they banned you, or you were mistreated, you're a disabled person and you got screwed over in life, and you found what I was going to do, and you see how things could have been different, join me. Follow me on the internet. Follow me on my YouTube channel. Let's expose this. Let's show the world how it could have been different. I was trying to make the world a better place. And Mark, he didn't make it a better place. He made it a worse place than it was, living off people's hatred and misery.